In 1959, there was an American sedan where you pushed a button to shift into drive, flicked a switch to set your cruising speed. The rearview mirror dimmed itself when the car behind you had its high beams on. The headlights switched down on their own when they caught oncoming traffic. And when you parked, the front seats swiveled toward the door so you could step out without twisting your back. Same year, most American cars still had you cranking the windows by hand. Almost every one of those features disappeared within a few years. And not because they didn't work. Nobody could afford to fix them when they broke. That was the problem. The technology was there. The service infrastructure was not. That car was the 1959 Imperial Crown Southampton. And no, I didn't say Chrysler Imperial, because Imperial wasn't a Chrysler. Not officially. Starting in 1955, Chrysler Corporation actually sent notices to all 48 state motor vehicle agencies telling them to register Imperial as its own separate make. They were serious about it. Now, to understand why Imperial went this far with the technology, you gotta understand what was happening in Detroit at the end of the 1950s. Gas was cheap, tail fins were getting taller every year, and the three luxury brands, Cadillac, Lincoln, and Imperial, were in a full-on arms race to see who could stuff the most gadgets into a car. But Imperial had a problem. In 1957, they'd had their best sales year ever. Over 37,000 cars, actually gave Cadillac something to worry about for once. By 1959, that number dropped to 17,710. The momentum was gone, just slipped away. So Imperial did two things. First, they moved production into a brand new facility in Dearborn, Michigan, built specifically for Imperial. Own staff, quality checks at every single station. Second, they loaded the 59 models with every electronic and mechanical innovation Chrysler had in the pipeline, whether the buying public was ready for it or not. And spoiler, they were not. From 1957 through 1966, Imperial didn't share its body with any other Chrysler product. That independence is exactly why the 59 Crown ended up being the most advanced car in America that year. Nobody was telling them they couldn't do something because it would mess up the parts bin for the New Yorker. So what did they actually put in this thing? Well, the guy behind how it looked was Virgil Exner, one of the most important car designers of the entire 1950s, and a name that honestly doesn't get brought up enough. Chrysler hired him away from Studebaker in 1949, and he basically reinvented the way their entire lineup looked, with what they called the forward look. His philosophy was simple. A car should look like it's moving, even standing still. I'm honestly surprised he didn't put tail fins on the company coffee machine. But here's a detail most people covering this car miss entirely. The 1957 Imperial, under Exner's direction, introduced curved side glass instead of flat panes. Industry first, developed by Chrysler engineer Les Parr, working with PPG. The 59 Crown was the last to carry Exner's original forward look before the next generation took over. Styling is nice, but the real story on this car is inside. Let me start with the most misunderstood feature. You'll hear people call it a push-button start. It's not. Engine starts with a key like any other car. The buttons control the TorqueFlite 3-speed automatic transmission. You push a button on the left side of the dash to select park, reverse, neutral, or drive. Chrysler's ads at the time made a big deal about how the controls were on the driver's left, quote, away from the children, which tells you something about parenting in the 50s. That TorqueFlite was so well designed that the basic architecture lasted into the 70s. Arguably set the standard for every automatic that came after it. One issue though, the reverse button sat right next to drive. Same kind of questionable layout GM had going on with their shift levers. Not great if you're in a hurry at a stoplight. This is my favorite piece of technology in the whole car. If I had to pick one thing to talk about from the 59 Imperial, it's this. The Mirror-Matic was an extra cost option on Chrysler products from the late 50s through 1961. Brought back 1 year only in '63, and then gone for good. It's a thick rearview mirror that sits on the dashboard with a tiny hole in the glass. Behind that hole, there's a photoelectric eye. When it senses headlights behind you, it dims the mirror automatically. Why so thick? Because there's a vacuum tube inside. Part number 2161079. If you're the kind of person who hunts for these. And apparently the thing was so sensitive that somebody lit a match inside the car and the Mirror-Matic went haywire trying to dim itself. Just lost its mind over a match. A guy named Luke, who restored one, had to replace a 12K5 vacuum tube and resolder every connection because they'd all gone non-conductive over the decades. He tracked down a new old stock tube from a retired radio repairman whose entire house was packed floor to ceiling with vacuum tube equipment. I love that detail. That's the kind of rabbit hole these cars send people down. The owner of the actual car that inspired this video said his Mirror-Matic still works, but he keeps it switched off. That pretty much tells you everything you need to know about late 1950s electronics right there. The button marked Autopilot on the dashboard is cruise control. Chrysler introduced it in 1958. Popular Science ran an article about what it felt like to drive a car that held its own speed, which sounds crazy now, but back then, people genuinely didn't know what to make of it. One commenter who drove one said the routine was to do 30, crank it up to 70, and let it go. Keep in mind the interstate highway system had only started construction in 1956. This was the first generation of Americans regularly driving for hours without stopping. The timing made sense. Now this is the feature that most people covering this car completely miss. The '59 Imperial offered an automatic headlight beam changer. Chrysler called it automatic beam control. Most people confuse it with GM's Autronic Eye, but Chrysler developed their own system. Photosensitive tube on the dashboard watches for oncoming headlights and switches your high beams down automatically. Problem across every brand that tried this was the same. Headlights would flicker between high and low from random light sources, street lamps, reflective signs, whatever. One guy with a '79 Cadillac Fleetwood said his dimmer dropped the high beams every single time the lights hit a reflective road sign. He shut it off for good. Far as I can find, the number of these units still functioning today on any car from that era is pretty small. Most people just gave up on them. Brand new for 1959. Fingertip-controlled dual-front swivel seats. Pull a lever and the seat rotates toward the door so you can step out gracefully. Which matters when your car is almost 19 feet long and you're trying to look dignified getting out of it. And let me clear something up while we're inside the car. The air conditioning is factory air temp, not aftermarket. Those round vents on top of the dashboard that look like somebody bolted them on as an afterthought, that's how Mopar designed their factory AC for years. You pull them up and swivel them toward the passengers. People who know these cars say they look like air intakes on an old ocean liner. And once somebody told me that I cannot unsee it. The '59 Imperial was also the first car with rear AC vents, something most luxury cars didn't bother with for decades after. One more option for 1959, air suspension supplementing the torsion bar setup. Tom McCahill, probably the most influential car tester in America at the time, called Imperial the best car built in the country. Tested the '59 at 122 miles per hour without any loss of handling, even with the air springs. When he asked an Imperial rep about them, the guy said the main purpose was keeping the car level regardless of how much junk you had in the trunk, which is a pretty humble answer for a 122 miles per hour luxury car. Beyond all that, power windows standard since 1950. Power seats since '52. The '59 added power vent windows, power door locks, a little joystick for the driver's mirror, and a toggle switch for turn signals instead of a stalk. It's a lot. Almost too much for one car in 1959. So what was under the hood? This is where it gets interesting, because at least one major valuation source online still claims the '59 Crown had a Hemi. It didn't. For 1959, the first-generation Hemi was gone from the entire Imperial lineup, replaced by the 413 cubic inch RB Series Wedgehead V8, 350 horsepower at 4,600 RPM, 475 foot-pounds of torque, 10.1-to-1 compression, single Carter AFB 4-barrel on top. Why did Chrysler kill the Hemi? Cost. Hemispherical chambers had to be machined from solid castings. Wedge chambers could be formed right at the foundry. Single-shaft valve train made the whole engine narrower. The 413 weighed 101 pounds less than the 392 Hemi it replaced. All of that weight off the front axle. Not everybody was happy about it. One forum member shared a story about his grandfather who said Chrysler had taken the guts out of the car when they dropped the Hemi. Some magazines agreed at the time, but the 413 was a genuinely excellent engine. It became the foundation for the 440 that lasted until 1978. For context, this engine moved a car weighing 4840 pounds through the quarter mile in about 16.7 seconds. Not bad for something the size of a small yacht. Imperial built exactly 4,714 of these Crown 4-door hardtops in 1959, out of 17,710 total, across all models. The Crown convertible is the real prize, just 555 built. And the ultimate unicorn? The Crown Imperial Limousine, hand-built by Ghia in Italy. 7 produced, $16,000 each. Nearly 3 times the price of a regular Crown. Why did all this technology disappear? The Mirror-Matic failed because its paper-wrapped capacitors dried out from heat cycling, and modern replacements don't come in the right values. Beam changer was too sensitive. Push-button shifting got phased out after 1964, under pressure to standardize controls across the industry. One by one, the gadgets went away because dealership mechanics just weren't trained to service any of them. Finding a '59 Crown today isn't impossible. Finding one where the electronics still work, that's genuinely rare. At auction recently, a Crown convertible sold for $96,250 at RM Sotheby's in October 2025. A hardtop went for $68,200 around the same time. Another hardtop with 63,000 original miles didn't even meet its reserve at $28,000 in January 2026. That spread from $28K to $96K tells you everything. Condition is the whole story with these cars. Nothing else matters. The 1959 Imperial Crown packed more electronic technology into one car than anything else on the road that year. Nearly all of it was 2 decades ahead of its time, and nearly all of it was a nightmare to keep running. Now here's what I really want to know. Has anybody here ever had a Mirror-Matic that actually worked? Because I've read about guys tracking down 12K5 vacuum tubes from retired radio repairmen just to get one running, and I'd love to hear if it was worth the trouble. And if you've ever driven a push-button Mopar, did you get used to it, or did you keep reaching for a gear lever that wasn't there? Let me know in the comments. Please make sure to like, share, and subscribe. It really helps me out. And I will see you all in the next one, enthusiasts.